Very good morning to you. If you're just joining us, I am in conversation with Newsroom Africa's politics editor, Sbungalwa. News 24 political editor, Qaanitah Hunter, has just joined us, and Professor Xoli Mngambi with the University of Johannesburg also is part of this conversation. Qaanitah, let me come to you. You're telling me during break that you have not had an ounce of sleep, and I'm really sorry to hear that, but I'm also thankful that you're able to join me to talk us through your story you're running this morning, that the Secretary General of the ANC, when asked to step aside, said a big and emphatic no. How did this happen?
Yeah, so there was, obviously yesterday afternoon, there was a expectation that President Cyril Ramaphosa was going to wrap the NEC meeting, and that was going to be televised. And it was about to happen, and insiders in the meeting said that the statement of the NEC was read out, wherein the decision that those who are criminally charged would have a 7-day ultimatum to step aside, failure to which they will be suspended from the party. And this is when the party Secretary General jumped in and said that he disagrees. And that was the catalyst for what we've seen, the chaos, and what resulted in the meeting reaching a stalemate quite late last night, with the officials of the ANC having to take a sidebar, which is really unprecedented in the fact that the NEC is the highest decision-making body of the ANC in between conferences. But this sidebar had to happen lasting late into the evening, and then a decision taken that the NEC will reconvene at 5 p.m. on Monday to make a final decision. But it was absolute chaos as a result of not accepting the decision that those criminally charged, including Magashule, or starting with Magashule, will have 7 days to step aside, failure to which they will face suspension.
Yeah. Sbu, what does this tell us about the balance of forces inside that NEC? You know, when Qaanitah describes what she is, I'm taken back to the moment during the Zuma era when the secretary of the SACP, for example, Blaine Nzimande, would come out and say, the NEC is torn right down the middle. They can't agree on anything. Is that the same that we're probably facing now?
I don't think they're torn down the middle, because if you look at the sway in terms of those decisions, I think I concur with what the professor was saying earlier, in that it looks like the president does have the upper hold. But that does not mean that there are not enough voices to howl and shut down a discussion. I mean, I think what we're seeing here is actually ANC members, leaders actually failing to accept a decision taken by the senior highest decision-making body, because these reports and the reports of the Integrity Commission were presented to that very NEC, and the decisions were adopted at that very NEC, including on the issue of the guidelines. So for it to collapse at the last minute, that tells you that perhaps this was a strategy to always collapse the meeting. Remember that what we've seen over the years, I mean, the ANC in the Eastern Cape, there was that conference when the one faction felt that they were losing the argument, then they collapsed the conference, there was the throwing of chairs. Exactly. You know, we saw it about 2 months ago when the ANC in Gauteng had a PEC meeting around the issue of Bandile Masuku, who's now the former MEC for Health, where the meeting had to be abandoned because the members, leaders were howling. What we have not seen is this level of ill discipline at the highest level, which is the NEC. I think what it talks to, as you're asking the question, what does it mean? It means that the relations have broken down, I would even believe, to a point where they are irretrievable.
Professor, let me come to you. I want to ask about the president preaching unity, which is what the papers reported at the weekend, that at the opening of this NEC meeting, the president once again preached unity. And I remember at some point political commentators like yourself saying there actually is no point to the president preaching unity with elements within the party who are in conflict with the law. Is that something that he is going to continue endlessly until some semblance of unity is reached, or is it a futile exercise?
No, it's not a futile exercise. To have a party, there must be unity. So as president of the party, you must continue talking unity, but more than that, you must make sure that everybody comply with the rules of the party. because a party implies unity. It means compliance with the rules of the party. If other people do something completely different, then you no longer have a cohesive organization, and that is counterproductive. So that is why I've always been saying that for the ANC, they can't preach unity with people who don't share the mainstream views of the ANC. You can't have unity with bandits, right? So unity, you can only speak of true unity if everybody complies and shares the core values of the party. So you can't have unity at any cost. No. It must be unity of around particular set of ideas. Those who don't share those ideas then should be taken out of the party. I mean, it's just as simple as that. Because what you then have, because of this fake unity, you have these moments of tension. You have people, rogues, who pretend to be representing the ANC. And when these people speak, the reputation of the ANC takes a knock. So what purpose does it serve a party to have bandits representing them, speaking on their behalf? So it's time the ANC acts. And so it's not enough to speak unity. You have to act and get rid of those who don't share your values.
Qaanitah, I want to come to you, but before that, I want us to have a listen to Ace Magashule sometime last year when he made an appearance. I think it was for the first time at the Bloemfontein court on the corruption and fraud charges that he faces. Let's have a listen to him.
This ANC is an organization of branches of the ANC. That is why I will respect the voices of branches. If branches say I must step aside, I was elected by branches at conference. I will go back to a special conference and the branches must say to me, Comrade Magashule, step aside. I will then do so because it will be coming from the basic unit of ANC, the branches which voted for us at conference. Nobody and nobody can remove us.
Qaanitah, basic unit of the ANC are branches of the party. So was that the prevailing message from the faction aligned to Ace Magashule?
This is an outdated argument because branches of the ANC had decided on the matter, and in the Nazareth conference passed a resolution that those charged criminally should step aside, and that was a decision of conference reaffirmed by the NEC of August 2020, and since then there has been a back and forth, and finally the NEC last month then said, here's our guidelines, and Ace Magashule subsequently to that said, he will only step aside once the resolutions are passed. Now the resolutions are passed, and so there's this sort of back and forth, and the goalpost keeps moving, obviously, as Magashule and his supporters try to cling onto their positions. The interesting thing now is to say how far they're going to go in terms of calling for this special conference. It's a threat that they've had for the longest of time. We even saw it when there was a lobby against former President Jacob Zuma, this constant threat of, let's call a conference and let's branches decide. There's a real reality that, branches of the ANC can be manipulated, and so that's something that we just have to keep in the back of your mind when you hear those conversations. But now, I think what President Cyril Ramaphosa did from August up until now is that he kept kicking the can down the road. And I think now there's no can left. It's a squashed piece of steel, and I think that there has to be a very definitive decision, and there has to be, you cannot talk and beat around the bush anymore. I think now is the time to say that the Secretary General of the ANC was incorrect. But I mean, you saw the tone of the meeting from Friday, that not only was this issue around the Integrity Commission a point of contention, it started off with what was happening in Makgashule's office around Colony House and the RET grouping that has been described as an organization within an organization. There was also the attacks on Makhashule in relation to his comments around the Busisiwe Mkhwebane vote and in Parliament, where he said there was no constitutional structure of the called the top six, literally undermining his fellow leaders of the ANC publicly. And so you can feel the desperation, and you can see that basically President Cyril Ramaphosa's commitment to reforming the ANC is hinged on whatever happens this evening. I think that the fact that the meeting was not allowed to just disintegrate into chaos and leave it as is indicative that the president probably and his supporters probably want a definitive outcome, and as a result, the meeting will resume it this evening.
Yeah. In fairness, though, we can't only talk about Ace Makhashule. I remember distinctly reading in the papers yesterday that the meeting, when it starts, it was going to be George Mashamba, who leads the Integrity Committee, who was going to table a report, and there was a specific mention of the name Cyril Ramaphosa and Ace Makhashule, the two who were meant to have appeared before that commission. What is the story around the president and his appearance at the Integrity Commission?
The president actually, Xoli, has already appeared before the Integrity Commission. Remember in December that actually took a beating when it was criticized by the Integrity Commission around where they were saying that he seems to be using legal processes to avoid accountability around the CR17 funds. As you would know, that some members of the ANC have raised issue with the fact that there was this amount of money, I think of about 400 million, if I stand corrected on the figure, that was used as part of his campaign towards Nasrec. And this had been brought to the attention of the Integrity Commission, and they had wanted to interview him, and the president kept stalling and referring to the fact that there was still a court case. And after that article and after that report came out, my understanding is that he did meet with the Integrity Commission around the issue of his funding. And in fact, in the interview I had with him, he even went as far in January, that was, where he went as far as saying he's willing to open up about his funding so that the ANC can be able to move forward and actually formulate guidelines going forward as to how does it regulate issues of funding of political campaigns within the party. Now, we also do know that the Deputy Minister of Finance, David Masondo, he also was flagged by the Integrity Commission. In fact, the Integrity Commission had recommended that he step aside. This was in relation with the allegations that he had manipulated one of the law enforcement agencies, I think the Hawks, where they arrested a former girlfriend of his. That was in relation to that. They felt that he is not fit to be the leader of the ANC's political school, but also to be a deputy minister. So that's interesting, because that decision would have to be defected as well. But also there was a decision on Bongani Bongo, but that decision was in relation to the case which has since been thrown out of the Western Cape High Court. That was in the allegation that he had tried to bribe Advocate Vanara. Now, obviously, that case has been dismissed, but subsequently, Bongo has been indicted in another corruption charge in Mpumalanga. So, obviously, that will have, whatever decision was taken then, I'm sure this is a matter of just updating, because the reality is the resolution is clear that members who are found guilty or who are accused of corruption or are facing charges, they should summarily step aside, Xoli. But I think, if I may, Qaanitah makes a point about this call that has been made by some, that the ANC should have a special conference. I think they're just calling the ANC's bluff. I don't believe that the Makhashule grouping has that necessary support to win a conference. I mean, I know most people like comparing him to Jacob Zuma, but the point is that when Jacob Zuma was fired, he had COSATU by his side. He had the SACP by his side. He had the Youth League by his side. Magashule cannot claim that currently. Yes, COSATU may be unhappy with the president over the dispute around the wage agreement, but they are not behind Ace Magashule. I can claim currently that perhaps one structure that seems to be firmly behind him is a component of the Women's League and the MKMVA, which is not a recognized structure of the ANC in any way. And more importantly, does Kenny claim to have KwaZulu-Natal, the Eastern Cape, and Mpumalanga as the provinces that support him? Now, those are the provinces. If you are working out the numbers, because it boils down to numbers, if you do not have those provinces, you cannot claim anything. You cannot claim a conference.
All right. Before we take a breather, we're going to say goodbye to Qaanitah Hunter. Qaanitah, before we let you go, quickly confirm for us, as a person who clearly has their ear to the ground, whether the president is going to be addressing the nation in the closure of this NEC meeting when it does resume sometime this afternoon.
Well, I suppose it depends on the temperature when they when they resume at 5 p.m. That was the expectation, that his closing address would be televised.
Yeah.
That's the expectation. But again, like yesterday, it's completely dependent on the temperature of what actually happens. And I do think that there is a lot of caucuses that are happening right now. ANC NEC members are, deciding which way this should go and what to do next. Between, I'm not going to say both factions, but all factions, because there's different interest groups. But I think we'll wait and see what happens this evening.
All right, and that's the point that we are going to pick up on, and I'm going to ask that of Professor Ndlejana, who is still with us. We're also going to be joined by the ANC spokesperson, as you can see on your screen. Bulemabe hopefully is going to join us in this conversation. This is Newsfeed, the AM edition.